Hey everybody! Before we continue with the whole marker thing and the second hobby, we now have a New Year's Eve and Christmas video. Sit back and make yourselves comfortable. I'm going to show you my latest work, a time-lapse of how it was created. It's also in the Christmas style, but a little bit in my style. And actually, I want to tell you why I draw this way, why I draw these strange creatures, monsters, why things can be a little depressing or aggressive, why I don't draw flowers, and pink ponies. As all the psychologists tell me, all the problems came from childhood. Okay, everything really is from childhood, but it's not the problems, it's the culture. Cultural layer, a cross-section of the 80s and 90s, but not the post-Soviet period. I'm talking about a worldwide tendency. And first of all, it is music. Because in my early childhood I became interested in rock and heavier music. But at first it was quite soft. There were certain classics like Scorpions, AC/DC, Queen, Nazareth, Slade, Journey, Mr. Big, etc. etc. But later on I recognized the dark side. Later I listened to Metallica, like many people who started to listen to heavy music because it is easy enough to listen to, at least the hit songs, of course. It opens up the veil of the heavy genre, but later on, for me, Metallica was left out, but I respect this band. I watched all the live recordings. For a certain short period of time I became a fan of the band, but it opened a whole genre for me that had a lot of diamonds in it, diamonds that became classics and that stuck with me forever. First of all, it's of course Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Dio, Whitesnake, Ozzy Osbourne and all of the tops performers and top bands of that time. And later on I started listening to some heavier stuff. And totally by chance I wanted to see another concert of Metallica. Metallica was playing in Moscow in 1991 in Tushino. There was Metallica and AC/DC, and at the very beginning Pantera was a supporting band. I didn't know any information about the band at this time, and it even scared me at first. Not too scary, but worried me, because there was a lot of tons of energy, aggression. Everybody, they were running around the stage, they were playing very cool, they shout to the microphones. The whole band played harmoniously like a rifle shot. For people played as one organism. There was a lot of aggression, and for me it was a little bit too much for this time. But then, of course, I became a huge fan of Pantera and started listening to more modern metal. I started from the origins and started to get closer to some heavy bands like In Flames, Children of Bodom, some Trivium, As I Lay Dying, and I became a huge fan of the Lamb of God. At the same time, I was searching all the older rock and glam metal from the 80s. Everything about the bands like Cinderella, Wasp, Skid Row, which is totally cool, Motley Crue, White Lion, Steel Panther, which is only just opened up. They are old guys, but super cool, kind of parody rock and metal. They play covers of the main hits from the 80s and 90s, and they write their own cool songs too. It's like a little joke, but they play very professional and really cool music. And it's still very cool sometimes to discover some totally old band, but for me it's new, or maybe not a band, or just a track from some band. So it happened once with the only album, probably not very famous band, Bangalore Choir. Classic 80s, 90s glam, high vocals, guitars, everything is great. A lot of great songs in this album. I found it somewhere and listened to it, and it's still in my playlist sometimes. Or we can take the other side. It's the same way. For some reason I avoided the band Creator. I listened to thrash metal, but I didn't discover it completely. And the old Creator tracks, I didn't like them so much. But the album of the 2012, it blew me away, blew my mind. 2012 and I think 2017, this album was cool too. I think I still listen to it. There are some super cool tracks on there. You can hear how the band has evolved, how it sounds so many years later. And overall I could see where the oldest stars in the genre could have gone if they hadn't taken an easier path for a wider audience, you know. Creator, it's dope. Anyway, why I'm telling you all this? In this style of music, the cover of the album plays a big role, and not only the cover, but the merch as well, like t-shirts, graphics, booklets, patches. This is also a separate culture, for example, an accessory such as battle vest. This is denim vest, which came rather from the bikers and came into fashion first among fans of thrash metal. On the back was usually made a big back patch. There's the logo of the album or the favorite album of your band, or just the logo of the band. And the rest of the vest was covered with patches with the names, logos, albums of favorite bands. And in the end it became an artifact, a kind of chronicle. It's also a memorabilia, it shows your musical tastes, and you can find some friends at the festivals too, get to know each other quickly, and it simply expresses a certain lifestyle for the people. Nowadays, Spotify or any streaming service or social network forms your playlist and optimizes it. Neural networks are picking up the music according to your preferences. But back in the days, before you listened to music, you had to find it, buy it, listen to it. Or in our countries, you had to copy and download. Sorry, I was a pirate and it's shame. But first of all, you have to find it, even in the last case, in the case of downloading. And the first thing that catches your eye is the album covers. The graphics on them look like a separate piece of work. Iron Maiden, for example, they have a protagonist, a hero named Eddie. It is a monster who appears on all the covers of the band. It's kind of comics, you know. Unfortunately, in our countries, comic books weren't common. I'm sure I would have flown away by them and I could be a fan. But I can say that I like Marvel movies, for example. The different form immediately changed everything for me. Because, you know, comics is the drawings, is the pictures, it's not a film. But there was also something that brought us together all over the world, and it's video games. All the retro stuff I haven't played before, I check it now, but any game on Sega or Nintendo is already a source of inspiration itself. I'd like to focus separately on 2D platformers. There are two progenitors of the genre. So far, all similar games are called Metroidvania. This is made up of the two names, Metroid and Castlevania. These are cult titles for consoles of 90s, which were the grandfathers of the genre, with their style, the artwork, the universe and the storylines. Metroid is about space exploring an abandoned station overrun by new organisms, battles with mutant bosses. And Castlevania, it's a little bit different. It's about the resurrected Dracula and vampires. You have to defeat his army and at the end defeat him, of course. Even today these games are so fun to play. It's definitely worth mentioning the books, the world of books, which always tell their own unique stories, involve the world, circumstances and plunge. Books gives our imagination more fuel and they're not as framed as movies or games. And the writer can put anything he wants and imagine. So it's almost always more interesting, and they help us develop ourselves, our brains, our imagination. Inspiration can be found everywhere in everyday life, even in the smallest and sometimes non-obvious things, even in a pile of garbage. The main thing is to keep an open mind, to look for it, to give yourself a break and do what you like to do. After all, if you are doing something you don't like, if you are only thinking about how to make money and you are constantly stressed, then there is no room for inspiration. Of course, I'm talking about all areas of life, not just the creative. I hope this video will help you get in the right mood and find your own way to keep your energy and your strength and find the new ideas. And PS, in many of the situations that I have talked about, there is a struggle between the hero and the anti-hero, the forces of evil. But no matter how big evil is, no matter how many forms and supporters it has, no matter how terrifying and terrible the enemy is, its own nature is such that it cannot exist forever, even in the history of the world. Sooner or later, someone will kick evil's ass, or the main character, or there will be a plot twist, a change of circumstances, and evil will fall. What I mean is Slava Ukraini, long live real Belarus, happy holidays to all, get busy with your own development yourselves, get your brain pumping, get better in every field of your life. I hope some of my subscribers will watch this time-lapse with the Nutcracker, listen to my story, and it will make them feel a little bit better. I wish the next year to be easier and more pleasant, and I wish that the good in your life will always win. So guys, please subscribe, write the comments, and see you the next year. Bye bye!